Well, thank you very much for joining me in this video. I want to talk to you today about distress sales. What do we mean when we use the term distress properties? Well, there's really two categories primarily that we can be referring to. The first one is where the property is underwater. What we mean by that is the equity in the property, the value in the property is less than what's owing against the property. It's underwater. The other situation is where the homeowner is falling behind in his mortgage payments, and so he's in arrears. There may be equity in the property, but he's got a problem keeping his mortgage up. And both those things are very much a possibility in the market we've just come through. It could well be that somebody bought their property in the first couple of months of 2021. We saw the property values slide throughout 2022, and it could be that the value is considerably less than what they paid for it. Also a fact that they may have had their mortgage at under 2%, they got renewed at about 6%. Maybe they bought a car in between, they've incurred some other debts, they're struggling, they can't make the payments. Either way, they're in a distressed situation and they call the realtor. Now, before you get excited and sign up the listing, you need to ask some questions. You need to find out what's the situation. Is it underwater or are they in arrears? And you need to find out whether or not you're going to get paid, and you need to find out at some point, is the bank or primary lender going to be stepping in? Has that process already been initiated? You need to ask some serious questions before you put pen to paper and sign that listing. When we talk about who's going to step in, we need to understand that it may well be more than one, we'll call it lien against the property. It's got a first mortgage. It may be there is a second mortgage. There may be a credit line. There may be some kind of lien on the property. We call those subsequent encumbrances. And the question is, if the homeowner is falling behind on his payments, maybe more than one of these lenders or encumbrances haven't been paid, and the question is, who's going to step in? Well, the first mortgage has the highest priority, but it's not necessarily who's going to step in. It depends a little bit on whether the process is going to be power of sale or foreclosure, and that depends on how much equity is in the property. We need to take a minute and understand those two processes. They're not interchangeable. Think back to when you were taking a real estate course and you were learning in school about power of sale and foreclosure. They're different. First of all, if you're going power of sale, it does not have to involve the courts. If you've got a power of sale clause in the mortgage, there's an automatic process. You give the person a notice of sale, and they've got 35 days to bring the mortgage up into good standing, or you can take over and begin to market the property. Not so under foreclosure. Under foreclosure, you've got to get a statement of claim that you file with the courts, give a copy to the owner. The owner can respond to that. The court's got to sort through it. It's going to take 6 months to a year to go through that process. So the one very, very quick, the one very slow. The one quite expensive, the other not so. But there's also the matter of equity. If I'm a lender and I'm going power of sale, then I get paid, and any surplus goes to the homeowner and to subsequent encumbrances. If I go foreclosure, once I gain possession of the property, I can sell it and I keep the profits. The subsequent encumbrances are with luck. So, depending on how much equity is in the property, will cause me to decide whether I'm going power of sale or foreclosure. Well, you say, if there's lots of equity in the property, the seller's going to sell it himself, and that's certainly normally the case. And so we don't see foreclosure very often because of these situations about cost and speed and so on. But it's obviously a possibility. Now, I want to talk to you about the process where you get involved. The seller, and let's talk about getting in arrears in your mortgage payment. Assume there's some equity in the property, but the seller gets a hold of you and they want to list the property and get it sold because they just are struggling and can't keep up with the debt. You need to understand that at some point in time, the lender is going to step in. Probably the first mortgagor, but somebody's going to step in to this process. And there's a couple of dangers that you need to be aware of when you're going through power of sale. The first is the danger of conflict of interest. We had a situation, we often run across this, where the lender is initiating power of sale, the owner is trying to sell the property first, we have it listed, and then the lender contacts us and wants us to sell the property under power of sale. So we've got a contract with the owner, and now we're being encouraged to get into a contract with the lender. Does that create a conflict of interest? It certainly can in agency issues. Had a call last week. One of my salespeople shared with me an interesting situation. He had a listing on a very expensive property, and the seller was getting behind in his payments, and the lender was initiating power of sale proceedings. But the interesting thing was he was the lender. So he was going to be representing the lender as the agent, but he was also representing the seller as the agent, and he was the one that was trying to recoup the money that he had lent in the mortgage. Talk about a minefield of agency and conflict of interest. We got to be very, very careful there. Then there's the question of insufficient funds. What if there isn't enough funds to pay out the commission in addition to the lender? Maybe you can pay out the encumbrances, but there's not enough money to pay the realtor. Well, you want to know this going in. It's going to help you decide whether or not you're going to take the listing. I encourage the salespeople, especially when it's thin like that, when it's tight like that, and when the bank's involved already in the power of sale, I encourage the agent to talk to the bank, bring them on side. It may well be that they will sign on the listing and agree to pay the commission, because certainly if they go power of sale, they're going to have to pay a commission. There's going to be added expense. There's going to be added delay. You may get them involved right up front and make sure that you're going to get paid. If there is sufficient funds to pay out the mortgage, but not sufficient funds to pay out the realtor, you need to have a talk with the seller. The seller's still on the hook to pay the commission, and does he have funds or the wherewithal to pay it? Can you make a repayment plan after the deal's closed? Well, you say, well, why can't we just insure with a large deposit we're going to get paid? There's a problem here too, and that is that until the deal closes, that's trust funds. So if the lawyer contacts us and says, we need the money that you hold in trust, we need that in order to close the deal, I've got no choice. Got to cut them a check and release that money. Why? I can't hang on to it against my commission, because my commission isn't earned until after the deal closes, and it won't close without that money. So there goes the security. I have to provide that. So it isn't a guarantee that you've got a large deposit that you're going to get paid. You need to find out, first of all, because we're also obligated for a co-broke. The co-broke expects to get paid. You've got the listing. If there isn't going to be funds, what are you going to do? The board bylaws require you to take legal action or assign that legal action to the co-broke. You need to make sure that you've walked that ground early rather than late. Then there's the danger of what we call an improvidential sale. An improvidential sale, this doesn't come up under foreclosure, but it comes up under a power of sale. An improvidential sale is one where the lender who's taken over the property is whistling the sale through, making sure he gets covered, but he doesn't care about subsequent encumbrances. He doesn't care about the owner of the property. And so he's selling it below market value just to look after his own interests. That's called an improvidential sale. And if the homeowner challenges it through the courts are going to award damages to the seller, saying that the lender who initiated the power of sale didn't look after his interests. It was an improvidential sale. He's going to make up the shortfall to the seller. So often a bank will sign an offer back, even though I know it's a good offer, because they're trying to create a paper trail to show that it wasn't an improvidential sale. So in summary, when we're talking about power of sale, yes, it can be good business. Generally speaking, the property is going to sell. People aren't going to change their mind and keep it. But you want to make sure that who's ultimately going to sell it. Is it going to be you? Is it going to be the lender? Are you going to have two different realtors advertising the property at the same time? Are you going to be in control of it? Are you going to be in danger of conflict of interest? And be very, very careful that there isn't an improvidential sale in the works. Hope that makes sense. Thank you very much for investing your time. Talk to you again next week.